Hello and welcome to 70 Years, 70 Muppets. More Muppets, please. A Muppet fan podcast presented by toughpigs.com. This is the podcast where we continue to celebrate the Muppets' 70th anniversary with a series of spotlights on our favorite Muppet characters, from fan favorites to even more obscure ones than the last time. I am this week's host, Shane Keating, and Mamma Mia, the Muppet of the Week is Angelo, performed by Tyler Bunch and designed by Paul Andreyko, making his world debut in 2010. Now, many of you might be asking, who the heck is Angelo? Well, I'll tell you. Angelo was the jolly chef who co-starred in the 2010 web series The Muppets Kitchen with Cat Cora. He wasn't a Swedish chef, he was an Italian chef. And the series was about him and celebrity chef Cat Cora demonstrating family-friendly recipes with your typical amount of Muppet chaos. Unfortunately, the website that used to host those videos is now, broken and can't play those videos anymore. Oh, whoopsies! More on that later. But now, it's time to get to the interview portion of our program. And, wait a minute. Something doesn't feel quite right. It's almost as if something, or perhaps someone, is missing. But I just can't put my finger on it. Well, they made music, I know that. And their name started with an L. It was Luca, wait a minute. I know now. Oh, I couldn't possibly do a podcast without Lance, my lucky singing wall bass.
My body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. Cha-cha.
Phew, that was close. I don't know how I could have forgotten about him. Well, there, nothing else appears to be missing, so come follow me into the kitchen. Now, to talk all about Angelo and the Muppets Kitchen, we have not one, but two very special guests. First up, he's the titular Muppet of the Muppets Kitchen, the man behind, or beneath, Chef Angelo. It's Muppet performer Tyler Bunch.
Ciao! Hey, everybody.
Oh my god, Angelo's here. And Angelo. And special guest the second, he is the president of the Jim Henson Legacy, author of 2 books about Jim Henson's first TV show, Sam and Friends, and one of the co-writers of The Muppets Kitchen. It's Craig Shemin.
Hello.
Hi, thank you both for being here.
It's good to be here.
Very exciting.
We're going to talk all about a web show that nobody can see anymore. Hooray!
Well, maybe this podcast will revive popularity and force our friends at the Muppet Studio to release it.
There you go. There's a couple of promos still available on YouTube, I think, if you want to be teased.
That's true. And perhaps some kind individual with the initials of SK put the full webisodes on some sort of archive for the internet before recording happened. I don't know.
I hear nothing.
Hey, I wouldn't download a car. I wouldn't steal a movie. So let's start with Craig, because Craig helped develop the series.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
Where the heck did this come from?
Well, they had the idea to do something cooking related, and there was that was being cooked around, so to speak. And I think they first were thinking, hey, perfect, we'll do the Swedish Chef, and he'll do a cooking show with Cat Cora. But there's only so much actual information that the chef is capable of doing unless, you take really big liberties and change the character entirely. And we had done some cooking segments with the chef on Donna's Day, and we found they would be really funny, but he couldn't really do any actual conveyance of information. He could show how to flip pancakes with a machine, and you can do the shtick. So I think that this was before I came onto the project. They came up with the idea to create this new character, Angelo. And I think, Tyler, you may remember, I think Paul and Draco did the designs of Angelo.
So I could also be wrong, and also to set the table a little bit more. This was at a time where cooking shows, cooking reality shows, celebrity chef shows were all the rage. So
Very
this
much,
was
yeah.
capitalizing on a trend. I wish it was just so amazingly creative that someone said, you know what, nobody's ever done. But it's far from that. My understanding, because the initial production team that was brought on board was a company that was formed by Bill Beretta and a partner. And I believe the initial design is actually Gene Beretta.
Yes.
I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
No,
because,
you probably are right, because Bill was definitely involved. And also, before I came on board, along with Elise Allen, who wrote the other scripts, here's a little bit of the story on how this was being prepped. Jim Lewis was working on it. And Jim Lewis was taken off the project to work with Mr. Oz when they were developing Jerry Juhl's screenplay, the cheapest Muppet movie. And so they took Jim Lewis off of that, and that's when they came to me and said, hey, we had to take Jim Lewis off this project. Are you available? And I said, sure. And they also brought in Elise, who had more experience doing some of the stuff that
Cooking instructions.
Well, Elise actually was on Donna's Day before I came in. We both worked on that. Like, we overlapped for like a week on Donna's Day. So I knew Elise very well, and she's still a good friend. But yeah, so Jim Lewis was on it before, and then I came on. Yeah, Bill's company was involved, and Bill continued to be involved as a performer. But I think at one time they were planning to have him direct the project, I think. And
it's a little even deeper than that. So once, to what Craig was speaking to, once the notion of the Swedish Chef being challenging to be a spokesperson or teaching any sort of recipes, or speaking with any sort of clarity or discernibility about a subject that they wanted to kind of sort of teach people, and the idea of a secondary chef was involved. Pretty much from the ground, I believe Bill was the creative force behind the creation of Angelo. Technically, Angelo is based on someone he knows in terms of its original creation. I cannot speak to anything that was actually recorded in Ones and Zeros as leaning toward that initial creation, but the foundational effort was an homage to an actual chef that is a friend of Bill's, who actually still, I believe, if the text from Bill is correct, still has his own restaurant. And the notion of the character and how he was to interact with everyone, and his sound and his physical presence were all an homage to the guy who owns Angelino's Pizzeria and Trattoria. And a few weeks before literal production began, the mechanisms of political whatever behind the scenes, Bill's partner and he, the production company that they had, was sort of elected to no longer participate. That relationship with the production company was dissolved. And at that time, Bill said, well, obviously my characters are involved, and he was still a puppet captain. There was a point where he was, to Craig's point, going to direct a couple, but he also stepped back from that. And I got a call from folks at Henson saying, hey, we're doing this thing. Your name came up to possibly take over the reins from Bill for the character, and we wonder if you have availability, would be interested. And I said, absolutely, I am more than interested, and I'm not saying anything until I talk to Bill. And the conversation went on a little bit farther, and it sounds amazing. It sounds awesome. I totally want to do it, but I really need to talk to Bill, and I'll let you know then. And over the course of the next week, he and I finally got to talk to one another, and he said, yeah, it made sense for him not to move forward with the character because his production company being removed sort of created a situation where it didn't make sense to keep Angelo as he being the central performer of Angelo. So full on blessing, and so it's one of the few parts for the Muppets that I didn't sort of have to audition for, just sort of happened. Some might argue after watching they should have had auditions, but I'll let other people make those decisions.
I would not say that. No. And I think, as I recall, one of the working titles for the show was Ciao Angelo. That was the sort of the thing, and I think that it may have actually been before Cat Cora was integrated into this.
But how did Cat Cora become involved in this project in the first place? Because I think I saw she had a restaurant at the Disney parks at some point.
Yes, she had a place called Spoodles, I believe. It was her restaurant at the boardwalk. And I couldn't swear to it, but I believe that was the one that she was sort of executive chef advisor consultant. So I have a feeling that she had that the Cat Cora involvement came from the Disney side. And, it made a lot of sense because she, it would bring some sort of actual gravitas to the show, that there would be real cooking content, because that was one of the things that they wanted to make clear, that they wanted to actually have a cooking show that had good recipes and quality content, that it wasn't just about Muppets. And we didn't know really until she came if she could perform with the Muppets, because up to that point, I think most of her stuff was basically just straight on cooking shows, direct to camera. And I think she did a really nice job.
Agreed.
She seemed game to do anything.
Yes,
is what
especially, and I wrote a lot of stuff that involved her getting very messy, and she was very patient and had a lot of fun with that. And she had a bunch of young children at the time. She still has the children; they're just not very young anymore, I'm sure. And so she loved bringing the kids to the set, and I have pictures of her with all the Muppets and her kids. So it was something that she wanted to be there. This was not, and she also, in addition to having to do the on-screen thing, she had to supervise with her team. She has a culinary team. She supervised all of the cooking content. So which meant that there were people cooking backstage, and we did have an occasional snack or two after the, you didn't want to eat too much because it was under the lights for a while. But I do recall some of those things tasting pretty tasty. But yeah, she was very game. She wanted to be there. So that's one of the things on some guest stars on when you're working with the Muppets. Some of them are there because an agent convinced them that it was something to do. But she was having fun with it. Is that your recollection, Tyler?
Definitely. And you could tell every once in a while she was a little nervous that whether or not she was coming off as funny and whether or not the scenes were working. And she was, because of that, amazingly easy to work with and not so intimidated that she wouldn't come up with ideas, and she would what if, and every once in a while, and there would be especially when there had to be something physical going on, physical comedy, or something to do with something wacky, or the puppets bumping up against her and things like that. She was always completely game. No ego about at least the performative aspects at all, which was awesome.
Wow. I was going to ask about the food because there's so much on the set, and they're making so much, and who's making it, and if she makes the sandwich and then says, oh, okay, then we have to put it in the oven for an hour, and then you do your little time clock transition until it's cooked. Who's doing that? Is there an actual oven on set? What's going on here?
Well, I can tell you a little funny story about the set. Is that it's basically a rental of an existing kitchen set. One of the things that they have in Los Angeles is that all these set designers have access to, I'm sure that there's some online thing now. Back then, there was like a loose leaf book of different sets that were off of shows that had been canceled. And you could, you need a living room set for a commercial. They could like look it up and it's like, oh, we'll rent this for a day. And I don't know what the Cat Cora, what the Muppets Kitchen set was from, but it was basically built for something else. And, they rented it for the week for us and brought it into the soundstage.
Whoa, so so it had to have been built up.
Well, they take the set and then they just, when you're putting up the set, you can put it on as tall, jacks as you want to. But basically, they took an existing set and just lifted it up and put platforms on for Cat.
That makes a lot of sense because if you're designing a kitchen that's supposed to be the Muppets Kitchen, it looks far too modern, far too clean. There's a lot of photos and frames that are like not the characters, and
well, that's sort of the thing that when you look at the set, it doesn't say Muppets Kitchen. Mm-hmm. And when we were working on the treatments and the development of this, we wanted to, we were asking what makes this the Muppets Kitchen, and especially when you have a character that nobody's ever seen before. It's like how do people know that this is the Muppets Kitchen? And we're like, well, we need to have Muppets come in from time to time. And that was when we first were developing these scripts, where there were about like 12 scripts that they were saying, well, cooking shows can really move fast. We can do like 10 or 12 scripts in a week. And then we're like, well, we need to have the production value that people expect from the Muppets. So you're adding characters. And I was very, I don't want to say insistent, but it made sense to me to always have like a little Muppet insert, in these episodes, either if it's a fake commercial or, the little movie trailer with Bunsen and Beaker. It's like, okay, we should have one of those in every script. So then you're like, okay, we can no longer do 10 or 12 of these. So by the end, we had scripted most of them, but I kept on getting the call. It's like, okay, we're only doing 8 of them. Okay, we're only doing 6, because as they're storyboarding and Kirk Thatcher, who directed these, is a great director, as he's looking at the reality with Rita Peruggi, who is the producer, of what they can actually get done, it's like, okay, we can do 6 of these.
So that one Bear on Patrol skit cost like a whole episode?
Well, no, but it just, anytime you add, there's like, okay, it's sort of like when you're writing for the Muppets, that, okay, you have a human and a Muppet, and it's going to take X amount of time. It's the simplest thing in the world. Then anything you add to that, like, okay, that one Muppet has to pick up a phone. Okay, that adds time. Okay, you're going to add a second Muppet. That adds time. And you're going to add a third Muppet, and the Muppet has to come in from a door. Okay, that adds time. So it's like you could sort of figure out that by adding that insert, it's going to, okay, it's 2 Muppets, and they have to build another set, and they have to do a repo, and that adds time. And I think, Tyler, you may remember this, or you may not, but did we do all of the inserts like on a separate day or 2 or day and a half, and then do the kitchen stuff?
I am also a little foggy on that one. I know that we did definitely gang shoot stuff. I don't know if it was all a singular day or...
And some of it was also performer availability, because
right.
I think we only had Steve like for a day and a half or something like that. And we had, Dave for like one day. So it was, we couldn't gang shoot it entirely, but...
And I also have a vague memory of, Cat having other obligations, so that kind of freed the schedule up for Muppet-only stuff.
Right.
I think Dave is almost in every single one of those episodes, so I think he was
so maybe he was
available the most.
Yeah.
Not as much as Tyler, because Tyler was there for literally everything.
Literally everything.
The whole enchilada as a food turn of phrase.
Did we do enchiladas? I'm trying to look at it.
I think so.
There was a wrap. A wrap is kind of an enchilada, I think. Right? I don't know.
It is now.
You heard it here first.
completely decimating yet another culture.
So to circle back to Angelo for Tyler, what are you consciously thinking? Because as you're performing Angelo, I'm sure you're thinking, okay, the Muppets already have this chef character, iconic, everybody loves him. What do I do to make sure that I'm not making people think, where's the Swedish Chef? Like how are you trying to make it not feel derivative in a way?
Well, firstly, just to reference the last point first, the presence or absence of the Swedish Chef, theoretically, I mean, you could almost say that about why haven't we seen insert any other character from the Muppet, legacy? Why didn't they show up as a cameo or what have you? The fact that maybe the Swedish Chef should have been there because it's the Muppets Kitchen and there's already something that can be readily identified with kitchen. To me, it always kind of felt like, obviously, we're in Cat's house. Mm-hmm. I don't know why Angelo was in Cat's house, but he is in Cat's house.
And not a cat house, just
exactly,
Cat's house,
so to speak.
Yeah.
He's in the Cora residence. My biggest thing was more to do with how does Angelo feel like a Muppet? Because those characters have such strong isms, and they are particularly shined facets of a focus or a flaw, if you will, as other people have spoken about, the way the characters kind of wrap around the kernel of a thing and become layered efforts at an aspect of humanity that gets to be spun around and bounce off each other and real things. Angelo had so many things he had to do narratively and had so many things he had to do for what the conceit of why all the Muppets were in this place at this time. He had to be understood to a certain degree, because there was some teaching, or at least asking Cat the right questions, because the recipes were such an integral part of what was being done. But at the same time, most of the humor came from Angelo misunderstanding something, or not getting something quite right, or not understanding, a colloquialism or typical societal reference. So for me, the only way to kind of bridge the gap with the audience at home was the now I would never ever be allowed to do an accent. And I don't believe, I certainly hope, I never got any letters that it was offensive, because it was very obviously kind of a cartoonish thing. And at that time there were other cartoonish people with English as their second language dialect present characters in the world. And the other thing to just visually get used to, it's rare that as a puppeteer, unless you choose to it, who's performing a character who has live or glove hands, that you have no control of them whatsoever. Someone else is doing both of them. Often, when you talk about emotional gestures, literal emotional gestures, the core performer is in charge of at least the impetus of one of them, so that the timing and the this, that, and the other are from a core place that then someone stepping in to do the other hand is adding to. And in this instance, I had to give over literally, I'll call it 2/5 of the performance to Paul. His choices are very present, and Angelo's gestures and how much he gestures and what kind of gestures he uses are terribly visually present. So I also sort of have to lean into reacting to what Paul gives me in those instances. So Angelo is very much a team effort as far as the performative aspects are concerned. And like I say, I hope he wasn't too offensive, but the times you live in, they are changing.
I remember that also one of the things we had some discussions. We wanted to make sure that we didn't convey that Angelo was replacing the Swedish Chef, because and that there's actually a line in one of the scripts. I had Beauregard come in to do a delivery, and he's like, "Didn't you used to be Swedish?" and we had the chef popping up in another episode. So we wanted to make sure that Angelo was seen as an addition to the Muppets family, and maybe like, is sort of the guy who comes in on the chef's day off, the Swedish Chef's day off, and helps out. Because it's like we weren't dismissing the Swedish Chef. It was just the specifics of this particular project did not lend themselves to his unique. If you're going to get letters about Angelo, they would have been getting letters on the Swedish Chef for years. And as I recall, Jerry Jewell told me the only letter that they ever got was someone who wanted to point out that the Swedish Chef wasn't really speaking real Swedish. And Jerry said that he wrote back. He said, "Oh, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We confronted him and he admitted it, but he's agreed to go to Berlitz language classes. And, he has a wife to support. So we didn't want to let him go."
Oh, that's wonderful. I remembered what my question was. So since you got cut off short of the amount of episodes you wanted to do, is that where those hasty, tasty cooking videos came in?
Yeah, I think that that was sort of an effort to bolster the content that was on the website. And I haven't looked at those in a long time, but if you look at them, they're very, very simple. And I think it's just, is it?
It's Cat, Angelo, and then Pepe comes in like at the end to do.
Yeah, so that was like, okay, we appreciate what you did, and they're really good, but now we need something really cheaper. And that's basically, we cranked out the scripts and yeah, that was basically, thanks for keeping the Muppet production value alive and up there, but we need something cheap.
So one thing I kind of noticed whenever Kat's talking and like doing her, like this is for her instructions, like this is, we put the bread, then we put the meat or whatever. Angelo's kind of like throwing stuff in. Was that all ad-libbed or is that Craig's and Elise's writing?
With
both of those series.
I'd say it's again back down to percentages. I'd say it's probably about 35% what they wrote, and then the kind of fill in that was almost a joke. Those are probably me.
Yeah, and I think that's about right. And I think because, the scripts sort of lay out all of the comedic things, but then when you get to the recipe, there's sort of bullet points. Mm-hmm. And Cat sends us what has to be done, or Cat's people send us. And it's sort of like just a sequence of events. And that's where Cat is really ad-libbing based on her years of cooking show stuff. So there's really not a way to script off of that. So, we will, Tyler will ad-lib, but also there'll be a little run-through and rehearsal, and we can brainstorm on some ideas. But I think that's about a pretty accurate percentage.
Now, when it came to the recipes, were they things that Kat came to you guys with, and then you say, "Oh, she has this recipe for popcorn. Let's do an episode about movie night"? Or was it you saying, "Oh, movie night is a thing. Do you have any recipes that would be good for that?"
It was a little of both, as I recall. I think that they started with sending us just some rough ideas of areas of food that they wanted to explore. And, one of the things that they wanted to do, okay, Kat's Greek, so they want to do something with tzatziki, and they want to do this sort of thing. And she's known for these Sammys, and they want to do this, and they want to do that. And it came off a very rough list before there were specific recipes. And then we generated just a one-paragraph treatment for each episode, where we sort of talked about the type of recipe or area of foods, and then that went off to them and they generated the recipes in full.
Cool. We might have touched on this already, but from both of your perspectives, what sort of, in regards to Angelo, what's easy about creating a new Muppet character, and what's hard about creating a new Muppet character? And what if it's the same thing maybe?
Well, the easiest thing for me is to say, "Hey, Tyler, create a new Muppet character." And he's going to be Italian. No, I mean, it's very much that, it's like, I think that my contribution was adding A to the end of every syllable, Hey, that's a nice.
Of
So
course,
I mean, I didn't really have that much of a role in creating Angela, but I think Chico Marx probably had a lot to do with it.
there you go. And again, it goes back to here. Actually, I should find it so I am not misquoting. Because in anticipation of this, again, as I said before, I reached out to Bill and I was basically, what would you like said? What would you not like said? Because Angelo's very much, you are part, obviously, of his DNA. And I wanted to be specific. So, character is based on my friend Angelo, used to be the head chef at a very famous restaurant in Pacific Palisades, which somehow survived the fires, by the way. He left that restaurant. Bill met him when he was running his own restaurant near where his production company Storeville Studios was. And then, I'm going to try and get to the point. Yeah, he runs his own restaurant, which I think he gave me the name. He and Anthony Quinn's son, Francesco Quinn, who's unfortunately no longer with us, shared food there together. And also it just so happened that the original Angelo is from the same town where Francesco was born. So there you go. So the impetus, the germ, is based on a real human being, like I said before. So what was brought to the design and the visual impact was a caricaturized version of somebody that Bill actually knew. And I unfortunately couldn't capitalize on any of that because I didn't know. And it began, per what I said before, bouncing up against these very strong characters that are going to come in, even if they're just doing cameo style appearances. You want to feel like Angelo, is one of the crayons in the box. He can't be a colored pencil or a marker. He's got to be one of the crayons. So figuring out ways, whether it's timing, Angelo kind of accepting every kooky thing that happens is just what happens in the Muppet world. Like, it's not a shock, it's not a surprise. It's all, we got to deal with this now. And again, those same things of having that roadmap, so that makes it easy to start going down a path and knowing what decisions you have to make, is double-edged sword. The hardest part, because you don't want to create a character that doesn't fit in. You don't want to have an energy on the set that doesn't fit in, especially if it's going to be there for every episode.
There was one of the shows that we didn't produce, actually, was sort of designed to set up the premise of how Cat and Angelo end up doing the show together. And they decided not to shoot it just because I think that they wanted to just sort of spend more of the effort just on doing the episodes and not sort of explaining anything. And I think the concept was that Angelo and Cat both arrived at this set having each been told that they're hosting their own cooking show. And Kermit sort of like has promised them each a show. And then they arrive and they meet each other for the first time, and Kermit sort of like, oh, hey, great, you're both, you do it together. And that's why it's the Muppets Kitchen with Cat Cora and Angelo is there, because like Kermit just sort of figured it would be fun to put them together without telling anybody. And that was sort of like, that's how we sort of proceeded. But none of that's ever explained. And so I guess the feeling is that it didn't have to be.
That would have been fun, though. I do recall when you would first go onto the website, the first episode that would autoplay is the birthday one, which I don't know if that was... The first thing you see is Fozzie and Gonzo, so I think maybe that's why they picked it, because here are the recognizable characters, But then you see Angelo, and he's dressed up as Cat Cora with the wig and the dress. And I don't know if that would be the ideal way to introduce your new Muppet character, as pretending to be somebody that they are not.
And somebody that most of your audience probably hasn't met yet either. Like, neither one of them. And you only hear her voice. You don't know who's talking. She's off screen.
She's in a pantry the whole time.
Even if she was a human you would recognize, you're not given the opportunity to recognize her.
I think that, it would make sense if Angelo wasn't wearing the wig, if you're trying to, introduce this new Muppet character to have that be, have him have that time alone with the audience, with his good friends, who are also Muppets. But yeah, the wig does make it weird.
And also the fact that you never see Cat wearing her hair in that fashion. He doesn't look like Cat. He's just in drag.
Yeah, I don't know why they put the episodes in the order that they did. It was, and I think that sometimes they put it in there for very specific reasons, and sometimes it's just the one that was finished first. It's sort of like they number it that way.
I suspect it was alphabetical order because it was birthday and then breakfast and then game day and then movie night, and that all goes in an alphabetical order. That might have been it. I don't know. I didn't make the website. But I want to circle back a little bit because Craig brought up one of those unproduced episodes, and there are 5 others, right?
Yeah, I have here. I'm going to hold it up because the listeners won't be able to see it. So listeners, here
he has a clipboard. There's words on it.
These are the story premises. And I made notes here. We have these that are produced movie night and game day. Okay, there was going to be, originally it was called Winter Solstice, spelled S-O-U-L. And it was going to originally have Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem putting on a Winter Solstice celebration. And we were going to meet Angelo's nanas, his two grandmothers. And then that eventually evolved into Delishmicus, which was a holiday based all around winter food. And it was going to have just Rolf and Dr. Teeth and Gonzo, because I think that having the whole Electric Mayhem band was a budgetary issue. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you're not seeing characters, it's not necessarily that we didn't want to use them. There are multiple things. There's performer availability, and there is also puppet availability, and I'll get to that in another episode. There was also an episode called All in the Family, and that was the one that was set up to introduce the premise. And it was going to also have the insert in that was a Muppet Labs focus testing to indicate how they came to the idea of having Angelo and Cat together on this show. And it was Bunsen Honeydew, and Beaker was going to be on the meter that went between the two of them. And he would be bobbing back and forth.
Like physically tied.
He was the meter. It was like, which do you prefer? And he was sort of bouncing back and forth, and it landed in the middle. So they decided to bring in both of them. Then there was the 800-pound Grilla, which was a barbecue show. And it actually was to involve a gorilla Muppet. Because they thought that they were asking for a gorilla when Angelo said, "Hey, bring in the gorilla," because the dialect comedy we hadn't milked enough. And that was going to have sort of a Monday Night Football parody insert with the Eagles versus the Bears, and it was Fozzie and Sam facing off in a game of Go Fish. Vegetarian Idol. Now, this was the very beginning of American Idol, so that was the big thing. So they were going to do, it was a vegetable show. And the idea was to select the vegetables using a talent contest and having the vegetables perform a la American Idol. And there was going to be an insert of the vegetables auditioning with Rizzo and the Swedish Chef joining Angelo as judges. And we did that one. Oh, and we did that. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, we did some of those. And then we have, there was Does This Taste Funny? And that was Fozzie Bear in search of the funniest recipe ever. And as Cat and Angelo cook, Fozzie tosses in a few jokes to go with the food. And the insert was going to be Statler and Waldorf. And then we had a picnic basket etiquette, and that was going to be Cat invites Angelo to join her for a picnic so they can get out of the kitchen, and then but first they have to evict the Muppet rats from the picnic basket they plan to use. So that was sort of the whole storyline. And then there was going to be something called a cheese festival. That was an optional. That was a 13th episode. And they wanted to, Angelo plans on entering his Nana's famous homemade cheese into the cheese festival. And the cheese starts getting really, really stinky, and Cat and the Muppets try to put up with the growing stench as Angelo works on his cheese. So, yeah, there's some of them, there's a reason why we didn't do them. But one thing I did want to point out is that, like, in terms of the puppet availability, originally for the Slumber Party, it wasn't going to be Randy and Andy. We originally wanted to have Link and Julia Strangepork, but the puppets were in such poor condition, and they were years away from getting rebuilt, and there was no budget for puppet construction really. So we didn't get them. They said, "Oh, Randy and Andy are still around," and I'm like, "Great,
Better than nothing."
yeah." And then in the sports episode, in the Y Games, that was originally Kermit's role. You know, we don't usually on the Muppet side of things put Kermit in the trench coat. I think we had to get a special okay to do that. Originally, it was going to be Louis Kazager from Muppet Sports, and I'm like, well, we had used him in Muppet Moments on the Good Morning America. That was the last time I used him in something, and then you realize that it was like, oh, that was more than 10 years back. So Louis Kazager was also not available in a performable condition, as they say. So we put it in Kermit. But the one thing we were able to go back, when you see Fozzie as Bear on Patrol, that is the original Bear on Patrol uniform that they were able to dig out of storage. Danielle was not able to find the badge. I think the badge on his hat, so I think he's badgeless.
Wow, you heard most of that here first. I don't think
why
I've heard
anybody would ever want to know any of it. But
I've heard a couple of those on other interviews, but all those unproduced episodes. That's a Tough Pigs exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. And I was going to ask about the Kermit thing because that is so tied to Sesame Street that I was curious if you were even allowed to do that and who had to say what and when.
Yeah, I think that they were, it was a matter of sort of saying, hey, look, Kermit had done this on the Muppet Show before. He did it with Coosbane. So it was not like, it was not a big thing. And they were basically, I think someone may have called Sesame and just said, we're doing this, but it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm. And, Muppet clothing does not deteriorate, unlike the puppets do.
That is certainly true.
Which is why if you go to the Museum of the Moving Image and visit the Jim Henson exhibition, you'll see all of what remains of Janice and Animal is her hair and their clothing. Because it did not turn to dust. Do you have a favorite thing from the show that you, like a favorite one of the episodes or this little or insert skit? Or if you don't, that's A-okay.
Well, I do, but I want to see if Tyler wants to go first. But...
I remember during one of the Tasty shorts, I simply remember the moment of improvising and during the recipe as Cat's going on, and I did something, and Bill happened to be down helping wrangle some of the physical props that we needed to do. And I said something that made him laugh, and his eyes darted up at me and got huge, like he was afraid he was actually going to laugh out loud. And we caught each other, and I kind of had to recover. And for me, when you get to sort of make one of your heroes laugh, it was a big deal. I was happy with that moment.
Craig?
Well, I have a couple of things. I do love the Frankfurter Stein insert. Because it's like, they were telling me, oh, we have no money to do puppets or anything. And then I said, well, can we do this? And they were like, oh, we'll figure out a way to do it. So they were able to build the Frankfurter, which oddly doesn't really look like a Frankfurter, but I guess it kind of, it looks like a spoiled Frankfurter that's been brought to life. And then they did the beautiful, they turned Beaker into the Igor Hunchback character, and they did a beautiful job of it. And it's really great. So I loved doing that. And then I think my favorite episode was The World's Biggest Sandwich, because it's always like, it's one of those things you write, okay, and the sandwich collapses. And then you're like, well, how can we do this? And I remember sitting down or talking to Kirk about different ways we can do it. And it's like, oh, you just need some stuff falling in front of the frame, because they're like, we can't build a sandwich. We can't actually do something. And I wanted to do that episode because I was a big fan of Emergency growing up. So you hear the Penguin fire chief call out to John and Roy over the walkie-talkie. And then I loved the Towering Inferno. So the fire chief's last words are almost word for word the Steve McQueen speech at the end of the thing. And so I was like, I started talking about that to Kirk, and he's like, I got it. So, he's like, he does the slow push in, and he's having them add the little swelling music at the end. And I just like the way that all came out. And, it's a sandwich like this is going to rack up a body count unless somebody out there asks us how to build them. And it just seemed like it was sort of the Muppety way to go. But I do remember having, I wouldn't call it an argument, but there was a discussion with Dave Goelz. B. Lanoyle was doing the Penguin fire chief and had all this dialogue. And Dave Goelz came up to me and he's like, the penguins don't talk. The Muppet penguins don't talk. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't talk? He's like, hey, they're like, and I'm like, they talk. And I'm asking everybody around, don't they talk? I mean, I've heard them talk. And eventually I remembered, well, they talk in Muppets Take Manhattan. They're like, excuse us for living. And, and then there was like a National
And that's
Wildlife.
Dave. That was Dave.
That was Dave.
Movie.
Because, like, yeah. And I said, then they did it in National Wildlife. And eventually Dave's like, oh, yeah. But for a while, I'm like, is this this whole script has to be changed because Dave says that the penguins don't talk? But eventually he remembered that they do, or they can. I think we came down on, like, some penguins don't talk and some do. I guess the ones that don't talk don't have anything to say.
Some sort of rule, if they're wearing clothing,
yeah,
they can speak.
That's great. Yeah,
because I'm pretty sure that the fire department would not let a penguin in unless they could talk.
No. I'm also going to echo your sentiment. I love the Frankfurter Stein thing. I love Igor Beaker. That's a perfect use of Bunsen and Beaker. And even though I have no idea how they could possibly use that Frankfurter puppet again, I'd love to see him again.
Well, if you'll notice, cool. Yeah, it was not really, it was not what they call built to last. If they know that a puppet is going to be around the creature shop or puppet heap or whoever is building them, they're going to build them beautifully. But if they know that it's a one-shot deal, they're going to make it, they're going to make it so it doesn't necessarily last a long time. And they did that. I remember when we did the Muppet Moments on Good Morning America, I had Louis Kazager interviewing a trio of Muppet baseballs. And they were basically made to last 8.5 minutes. And I still have the baseballs. I asked Raleigh if I could have the puppets, and she's like, we're never using them again. Because it was basically just a foam ball sliced and a piece of monofilament, stuck in to open it and close it. So as soon as you start puppeteering it, it's already starting to rip.
Well, by Yum and by Yiminy, we have a special third surprise guest popping in. It's the hands of Angelo, and he's in a car. It's Muppet performer Paul McGinnis.
Hey,
Yay!
How are you?
thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I'm driving home right now from a play date with my son.
Okay, well,
Not driving, my wife is driving.
I thought
okay.
your son was driving.
Hey, Craig.
Hello, Paul.
Wait, were you just talking about the Muppet baseballs that they
I
did
was, yeah.
Good Morning America with?
I was, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I remember because that was right after Jim died. That was the very first one of the very first things that you guys did, right?
Yeah. It was like 1992, I think. Or
I
1990.
remember watching that and taping it, and I had that on VHS for the longest time because I thought that was just so special was that the very first thing that the Muppets did after Jim died?
I don't think it was, because I think we done that, the Muppets Celebrate Jim Henson, and I think
There
we've
was
done
that
some,
Billy Bunny video.
yeah, the Billy Bunny came before that. But this was, I think, the first time that some of the characters that we used had been used since Jim's death.
Okay.
And yeah, we did 10 of them. And I remember the Good Morning America people sort of coming by and visiting us. And like we took like a whole day to shoot one of those bits or two of those bits. And they were like, yeah, we would do a whole week's shows by now. You know, it's like a 10-hour day to them is five Good Morning Americas.
Oh my gosh. Was one of those bits also the it was during election year and it was a mudslinging thing?
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, I had that target in my office.
I remember those. So, you know how I knew that you guys were even doing that was I was a college student at UCLA at the time, and no, wait, I was in high school at the time, and I had convinced my dad to let me play hooky from school, and he drove me up to Hollywood Boulevard to see Jim Henson's star put down on the Walk of Fame. And I still have pictures from that day. I
Now, weren't
I
you
put
interviewed there? I remember seeing some
I
footage of
wasn't
the.
I wasn't interviewed, but I put my dad in a Big Bird sweater and I wore an animal shirt or vice versa. And we got there really early and took all these pictures. But I got to meet that was the first time I got to meet any Muppeteer. And met Brian Henson and his then wife was there, and he was so kind, and he invited me to visit the set of dinosaurs that they were shooting. So I dragged my sister, who was in college at the time, and she and I went to visit the set of dinosaurs, and they let me stay the whole day. They let me wander the whole lot. And it was there that Steve Whitmire was doing uh, I don't know. I was in a director's chair just behind him, watching him puppeteer. So I got to talking to him, which blew my mind. That was again talking to Steve Whitmire, and he had to fly out after they did this shot. He was flying to the East Coast to literally shoot one of those Good Morning America bits. I remember him telling me like, "We're going to be doing a Good Morning America bit. I'm flying out right now to do that." So I don't remember which one of those bits he would have done, but that's the connection to that bit that I have.
Wow, make
Wow.
me feel really old.
Yeah, so special. Why were you guys talking? I just got on the Zoom. Why were you guys
Oh, I
talking
was
about the
talking about
Muppets?
that because about the puppets that were sort of built for long term as opposed to short term, and the Muppet Frankfurter from the Frankenstein parody was not necessarily built to be used many times.
But I want to see him again.
Well, keep
Man,
your
I'm
cards and
manifesting
letters
that.
coming.
Hey, Angelo, he's in this new Muppet Show special.
Uh-huh.
So there's hope for the Frankfurter if he
Yeah.
can just be in the audience. But
Oh
I'd
my
be
gosh.
I'd be happy with that.
Tyler and I were so excited that Angelo was in this.
So I have a quick question before I ask you stuff about Angelo, because I asked Tyler about Thog. It's not a new puppet, right?
Not.
It's
Yeah,
is it green? Was it green screen?
it was. Yeah, it
I
was
knew
amazing.
it.
So I got to do Thog, which was amazing, but it's the same 9 foot tall puppet that they built a while back. And yeah, I just rehearsed for hours in the additional green screen or the additional soundstage we had next to where they shot this new Muppet show. And then we shot the other, like the mutations and the other puppets actually coming through the arches, and then they lifted the arches, and or did they lift them or not? I think they lifted the arches, and we just shot that against green screen with Thog. Um, and initially I had a monitor inside Thog, but we had very limited time. I knew we were at most going to get 2 takes, and during the first take, the monitor just fell off of its hook. So I ended up taking it out, and Matt Vogel suggested that, because I had a very little slit that I could see through. Matt Vogel suggested that I just follow him on stage, and then as soon as we got to a preordained spot, I hook a hard right towards camera. But we did that without a monitor, and that's exactly what I did. And they bought that second take, and I have no idea how it looks. I hope it looks good, but yeah, that was how we did it. And then and then they shrunk down Thog and made him fit through the arches.
Okay, a lot of people were saying, "Oh man, they rebuilt him or they built a new body. Thank goodness." And I'm like, "No, there's no way. It's too expensive."
Yeah. So
So, Paul McGinnis, what was it like being the hands of Angelo?
it was so much fun. I loved doing. I didn't. Thank you for sending me all those links. I didn't have time to go through all of them. I can't wait to like rewatch, but I watched some of them, and we did well. I'm really proud of what Tyler and I did with that puppet. I'm really proud of what he brought to it, and I'm sure he talked about that. And then for me, I remember thinking I really got to nail these Italian hand gestures, so I bought a book. There is a book just on Italian hand gestures, which is a little crazy and maybe not PC now, but I studied all of them, so when I watch those back, I see all of that studying that I did. And now I realize maybe I overstudied a bit, and maybe I put a little, because maybe it's not as fluid perhaps as I would have hoped, but on the other hand, I do watch it back and I think, well, that's distinct. That is different.
So you're touching a lot of food. Some of it's kind of goopy. Were you constantly having to like take your arms out, go wash them, and put them back in the puppet for every take?
A really good question. I think that we had a towel next to the monitor, and I think I probably just wiped off with it. I wiped off with that towel. Maybe I don't know if we had wet wipes or something to wipe it off with. I don't think there was any world in which I got out of that puppet and went to a bathroom or another sink to wash off, though.
So was there ever any question or people talking because the Swedish Chef, he is more flesh tone, so the hands kind of blend in a little more seamlessly and people don't think about it. But
Right.
Angelo, he had kind of more of a yellow tint to his skin
Yeah.
versus you don't. Was there ever any talk about should we paint your hands a little or something like that?
Another great question. I don't remember if there was a discussion
I
about
do.
that. You
Oh, boy.
do? Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Meester.
Oh my gosh, good to see you, friend.
Good to see you too. There was discussion. It didn't feel right with the design, obviously, to not have the same sort of approach to practical hands that was the approach to the Swedish Chef's hands. And orange makeup was discussed, but for the very reason you just asked about, it would have been another level of production. Every time he dealt with food and they had to clean his hands off, they would have to apply the makeup. And it basically there wasn't a consistent or a time-free, cost-free way to move forward. And it didn't seem worth it. It was just like, people will be fine with it. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
Sure. And I guess if you're touching real food that potentially somebody will be eating afterward, having paint on it is probably a bad idea.
Right. One of the things I always, tell people whenever there's that sort of discussion, it's like if people are looking at the color of Angelo's hands, then we're not doing our job. If the show is entertaining and drawing attention, people are not going to think about that. But that was sort of like, the one thing you're always, it's funny when you look at some of the stuff that Jim Henson did over the years where, he's putting the puppets into dirt and stuff and, there's food all over the place. But, when you're, one of the things they always tell me when you're writing for the Muppets, it's like, you can't get them dirty. Don't get them near stuff. Don't have them do anything. And it's like, okay, you can use crazy foam if you want to give them a pie in the face, but nothing else. Because, then it's a thing. Because, you look at some of these episodes, and Fozzie gets yogurt on his finger, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. And,
I clocked that.
but
Yeah.
that's one of the things about puppets like Angelo, having the live hands, you can get him all over things. Now, conversely, the one thing they don't tell you when you're doing this is don't get Cat messy. No one cares. No one cared if we're going to have her get pies in the face or fall asleep in pancake batter. It's like, yeah, I'm like, is she up for doing that? And they're like, I'll put it in the script. We'll see. And she ended up being up for anything like that. But it's like, it's always big hassle to get the puppets messy, but not a problem for getting the people messy.
So I have one more production question. Are you still good?
Yeah.
So in those hasty, tasty cooking videos, Angelo has a video camera with him, and there's only one online, so I couldn't gauge how much, but it looks like he's actually recording the stuff with the camera. But how are you as a performer able to see what that camera is doing? Or was there a monitor for your camera specifically, or was that just like, oh, we'll just shoot it afterward and make it look like he's shooting something?
Was that the case, Tyler? Were we actually doing that with the camera? Do you remember?
You were just that adept with putting it where it seemed to make sense. There was a separate handheld camera that shot an after the fact version to make sure that they got the framing right. I think it would have been too much of a performative variable to have that be a necessary part of the way the scene was done. So, but Paul's just that good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they had that backup option as well.
That makes sense. It's a little too unpredictable otherwise, I guess.
Yeah.
So, one final question for everybody. What is your favorite food to make and or eat? We'll start with Paul.
My favorite food to make or eat?
And or eat, if they're two separate things.
Okay. Can we come back to me? I want to take a second to think about it.
All right, we'll go to Tyler.
So I guess to make, the thing that I get the most praise for is I have different variations on chili. I do a hot, kind of sort of Texas-based, I guess you'd say, in terms of its recipe chili that has, raised quite a few eyebrows and made a little too many people run to the bathroom a little too fast. But as far as eating, I enjoy so many foods. It's interesting though, because I literally, the last one of these I watched, I get so ecstatic when I go to a party and there's pigs in blankets. I love pigs in a blanket so much. And I don't ever make them or have them at home. Like, it's always when I'm at a party, one of the walk around hors d'oeuvres comes around and, the pigs in a blanket. I like them a lot.
Craig?
In terms of making, I don't do a lot of cooking, but I do a very good omelet. I like a nice omelet. I do a very nice omelet. But I think my favorite food to eat is my lovely wife, Stephanie, Muppet performer extraordinaire. Stephanie DeBruzzo makes a wonderful manicotti, and she makes it from scratch, making the little crepes and rolling them and ricotta and everything, and that's sort of our traditional Christmas dinner, and that's my favorite, I believe.
Oh my God, that's a great Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Do you really? Oh, I love that. My sister actually makes tamales for Christmas dinner. Just side note, but I love that. My grandma,
and it's a family recipe. She learned the manicotti from her. It's her aunt and grandmother taught her how to do that.
My grandma used to make manicotti, and she would freeze it and then have my sister and me come by and pick it up so we could just go eat it in college. We'd bring it back to our dorm room. That's amazing. My favorite food to eat, I just think, is a good steak and baked potato and or mashed potatoes and just broccoli. That if I had to go to any go-to meal, that would probably be my go-to meal to eat. And I don't really make food so much that well. I'm not. I don't know. Wish I did.
And what about you, Shane? Are you going to answer your own question?
Answer my own question. Golly, I've never thought about doing that before. I also, I'm not much of a cook, but I love a good chicken parm. Mm-mm-mm. whether a dinner or in sandwich form. Can't get enough chicken parmesan. Maybe a side of penne, depending on where it is, but can't go wrong with that.
We should have another interview where we all get together and eat your parm, the manicotti, Tyler's chili to finish it off.
We'll turn it into a lost episode of the Muppets Kitchen. We'll invite Cat.
Yeah, she can cook it.
Definitely.
Except Stephanie. Stephanie will make her manicotti, just for consistency's sake.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, thank you so much, Paul McGinnis, Tyler Bunch, and Craig Shemin for coming in here. And
Where?
Well,
Yeah, right.
He's right behind you.
Oh.
Thank you for coming in and talking about the show that nobody knows or remembers.
I know. And the saddest part too is that all entities involved with the actual production across the board, even to the place where it was being distributed, really, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed making it. Everybody wanted to make more, especially the website people, because you have to remember, we're also used to streaming now. Streaming was not a thing at the time this started streaming. There was stuff available and some people did it, but it wasn't so integrated into society and certainly not into people's households. So everybody was competing for the new space and trying to make it popular. The folks at the website, this was the top thing on their website. And they were ecstatic about it.
Yeah, as I recall, we were nominated for a brand new Webby for Best Comedy Series, not cooking show, not children's show. It was Best Comedy, and that was like, hey, this is a real achievement, because usually when the Muppets get nominated for stuff, it's in children's categories or in other categories that are secondary. But this was a quite a thing.
Yeah.
And I suspect because they hadn't figured out really how to monetize things available on the web at that point, that was probably a large ingredient for why they didn't make more. But one of the things that was told to me is that the reason at the time it was discontinued was an effort by those concerned with the impact of the Muppet franchise at large to support the quote-unquote myth of the film that was being prepared about the time we would have been ready to do a second season, which in the narrative of the film, featuring Jason Segel and the new character Walter, the Muppets, quote-unquote, haven't been doing anything. So they didn't want to have a thing that would come out right before the movie might, because the Muppets would be doing something, and in the movie, they weren't supposed to be doing anything. So we didn't do anything.
Wow. What a crock.
Wow.
I think I just want to say that this was something that I think everybody involved with was pretty proud of, and
definitely
it was 1 week of very fun and long days, and I think I remember, I don't know who it was with, but I think one night after the shoot we all went out to dinner with Dave down at this place down, I don't remember where it was, but we were shooting up in like this warehouse in Burbank, and we all went out. So we were having a really good time and doing fun stuff, and I think everybody was really proud of the final product. And
definitely, you guys nailed it out of the park. The writing, Tyler, your performance, everything came together. I'm really proud of that stuff that we did.
Yeah, it's a shame it's not out there unless some kind person with the initials SK put it on an archive of the internet in some variety, which I may or may not be endorsing. I don't know. But thank you so much. I don't know I didn't plan an ending for this interview, so I'll just say, hey, look over there.
Well, I think Angelo should have the final word.
Oh, that's true.
And sign off the way he signed off from all of the shows.
Everyone close your eyes and picture him in your mind's eye.
Hey, Craig, I don't remember what I'm supposed to say.
I think you just said a ciao.
Ciao, right? That's what I thought. So, going back far into my mind, way back to there I am. I'm in the kitchen. Polly's up under me. Cat is next to me. And I see the camera. I look and I picture the faces at home, stuffing their faces. And I say, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
70 Years, 70 Muppets, More Muppets Please is a Muppet fan podcast presented by ToughPigs.com. Hosted by a myriad of people and edited by them as well. Produced by Joe Hennis. The Muppets 70 logo is used with permission by the Muppet Studio, with thanks to Danny Iglesias, Frank Reifschneider, and Lee Slaughter. Don't forget to follow ToughPigs.com on all social media platforms, and you can support us by heading to patreon.com/toughpigs or by buying merchandise at tpublic.com/toughpigs.
Hey, have no fear, Lucas Ross is here. Hey! Whew, sorry I'm late, but I was doing some extensive research to discuss Chef Angelo. I was binge watching the entire Muppets Kitchen series, and then I took some cooking classes over in Italy, and man, those boats back to America are just never on time. Anyway, I'm all ready to talk about my 16th favorite Muppet. Where is everyone? Hello? Shane? Jared? Becca? Lucas? I wonder if I could keep this tumbleweed. Hey guys, can I keep this tumbleweed? Hello? Angelo?